it is. If it's not logical, you know that it is wrong. So really, so much of parallelism is logic. And if you've been attending these webinars or the master class we had the other day, you know the SC, it's a logic kit, right? It fits the whole business school theme and everything else. Why do we do parallelism? Why are they testing parallelism, right? And there's two reasons. One is to see simply whether we notice things. If you're running a business or you're building a business plan or anything else, you need to notice things. Is this going to work? I remember years ago, I was heavily invested in a company, and someone pointed something out on the chart to me that I hadn't noticed, and that was huge. And you know, that company, it really didn't perform as well as I expected. And the funny thing is, what the chart was showing was that the CEO wasn't quite up to the same things he was saying he was up to. So just by noticing that issue in the chart, you could, you know, I could have saved myself a lot of headaches. So noticing thing is a key part of business, and it's a key part of sentence correction. The other thing, other reason they test us on parallelism is to see whether we're picking up on logic issues. So that's clearly logic and noticing things are key in sentence correction, and parallelism is a big part of that. They do it all the time. We can put some points on the board by making sure we always get at least notice these parallelism issues. They're not like crazy meaning errors. There's nothing subtle here. There's nothing subjective. It's always just cold, hard logic. Okay. I see a question here. I went to the gym and lost weight. Going to the gym. I went to the gym and lost weight. I went is the first part. We'll see how this works. We'll see how this works in a minute. Okay. There's two things we're going to do. And we're going to nail this. We're going to sum it up. Parallelism today. Two things we do to find errors in parallelism. One is we notice parallelism markers. Very simple. If you know, you have noticing the whole noticing thing aspect to this. And there's just a couple kinds. There are, I guess, 3 or 4 kinds, but not too many. And the main ones are the coordinating conjunctions, like and, but, or. If you see and in between two things, the two things have to be the same. You can't connect a noun and a verb with and. And the other part, we'll go over one more kind in a minute. And the other part is confirming whether the structure is parallel. In essence, confirming whether it's logical, right? Because if it's logical, and it's going to be parallel, and if it's parallel, it's going to be logical. So 99% of parallelism is logical. So our two moves: notice the markers and confirm whether the structure is parallel. Okay, sounds pretty simple. It is. In most cases, so how do we know whether it's parallel? In most cases, the way to determine whether a structure is parallel is to use carryover. Now, we've all probably done this in our heads a little bit, but let's lay it out. There's 2 ways we need to look for carryover. One is in list. And a list is a kind of parallelism marker. Someone's asking the question here. I went to the gym and lost weight. He's asking me what, you know, some details about this sentence. Well, what is it? Went and lost is a list. It's a 2-item list. So that's a parallelism marker when we see a list. So, and we always have in a list coordinating conjunction like and. Okay, cool. So now a list has to be parallel. So we have our parallelism marker here. It's a list with a coordinated conjunction. Has to be parallel. So what do? Very simple. We carry over. So we see the list is the guitar, the piano, and to play the bass. It doesn't sound parallel, but it might be, because some things that don't sound parallel are, and some things that do sound parallel are not. But we can be disciplined about this and look at what introduces the list, which is learn to play. Okay, simple enough. Carry it over. I learned to play the guitar. That works. I learned to play the piano. Okay, so now we have 2 items that work. We confirm that learn to play is what carries over. It has to be because it works for the guitar and the piano. I learned to play the bass does not work. How simple is that? So once again, we figure out what introduces the list, which is this, in this case, is learn to play. And then we carry it over to the guitar, the piano, and to play the bass. I learned to play the bass as a word. It's out. So 2 steps. We notice the parallelism marker, which is the list, and the coordinating conjunction. And we carried over when introduced the list and discovered that it doesn't work. This is going to work in every sentence correction question that has parallelism. Okay, the correct version obviously is Alex learned to play the guitar, learned to play the guitar, that works, learned to play the piano, works, and learned to play the bass, works. So all we do is we carry this over to these 3 spots, and we see that it works. Cool, very simple. Anytime you see a list with a coordinating conjunction, just carry over. It's logical, right? The reason this doesn't work is because it's not logical. It's not logical that we would say to play here and then repeat it here. Very simple. Right, y'all? So as soon as you see that list, you do the carryover, look to see whether it's logical, and you'll know whether it's parallel. Now, clearly, they're not always going to make it this easy. But you know, that's basically what we're going to do. They're going to put modifiers in there and things like that, sure. But you're still going to always be able to do that, basically. The other main, there's 3 other kinds of ways you'll see parallelism. The other main one is these correlative structures. And we can do carryover here too. So a correlative structure uses a correlative conjunction. And this one is not only, but also. This is called a conjunction. Because it does put 2 things together. And the way we do carryover with these is whatever follows these conjunctions is another kind of list. So we have a solution. And we have after, but also we have developed a way to prevent the problem from occurring. So we read the whole sentence. The team developed not only a solution, but also developed a way to prevent the problem from occurring. Notice that it sounds pretty good. When you just read it, it doesn't sound terrible. The team developed not only a solution, but also developed a way to prevent the problem from occurring. Sounds great, but is it logical?
Wait, but
so we should do carryover.
Meeting.
We see what precedes not only. So in this case, it's the team developed, and we carry it over. The team developed a solution. That's cool. That works. Okay. The team developed a way. Wait a minute. So now we once again have a repeat. And there are a bunch of different ways these can go wrong because you can carry over. You could have too much. You could have too little. And we talk about this in the course, show all the different, all the different versions of the way this is wrong. So you're ready, primed to see them. But in this case, the issue is developed is now repeated here when it was already said over here. So it doesn't work because it doesn't carry. We have to carry this over. It's understood to appear after not only. The team developed not only a solution. The team developed, but also developed. Doesn't work. Just by carrying over, we see that. And so what's our parallelism marker? Not only and but also. And then that's our sign that we need to check, and we check by carrying over. So let's do it again in this correct version. The team developed, we see a parallelism marker, not only, but also. So what do? The team developed a solution that carries over to after not only, and then we carry it over to after but also. The team developed a way to prevent the problem from occurring. Works perfectly. So we can carry, once again, we can carry this over here, and we can also carry it over. That's the way we're going to do this. We're going to hit a few questions. Let me check and see what questions are coming in so far. Can they also move around? Not really. But I tell you what, I've been going over a bunch of official parallelism questions lately, and I found that they do sometimes move the also around, but the only thing we really had to worry about in all the questions I looked at was whether there was some kind of carryover issue. The carryover thing worked every single time. Now there are some kind of exceptions to the way these structures work and stuff. That's covered in the course, but really the carryover is the key. Thing. Can the not only is not only but did wait a second. Not only did X. I don't know. Some of these details maybe check in the course or something. Is not only always accompanied by but also. Yes, But also, actually, it's sometimes accompanied by but only. But also is not always accompanied by not only. So, but also can be used in a few ways, so that's a little different. A noun can't be parallel to a verb, that is correct. Okay, cool. Okay, so we know our steps. When we're reading a sentence, if you see a parallelism marker, such as a correlative conjunction or a simple coordinating conjunction or a list, what you do, right? You check to see whether it's logical by doing the carryover. So let's hit a question. Do a little practice. Let's get going.
We can take a copy of these web pages.
Okay, you know the steps. This is actually not the easiest question. A lot of people get it wrong. So be careful with your steps and get it right. Take about 2 minutes on this. And if you could hold off on posting your choices until people have a chance to see it with unbiased, without seeing anybody else's choice, that'd be great.
Would that be when 1 hour later?
Yeah, 1 hour later.
Hey, man, I can't wait. Supposing I want to take a copy and send to somebody of this entire thing, what I have to do? Of what? Whatever is this web page.
Share the you selected. This web page.
Yeah.
Just copy paste this to an email and send it to it.
That's the way, huh?
Yeah.
Yep. Getting a few different answers. Tricky question. They threw in a trick. Let's see what's going on. And we'll notice that as much as they try to trick us, if we use our approach, we'll get this right. Sweet. I think we have a consensus. Okay, so let's start. The first thing we do when we read the SC question is read the entire sentence. If we focus too much on the answer choices or on the underlined part, we're going to miss things. So let's read the whole sentence. Recently implemented shift work equations based on studies of the human sleep cycle have reduced sickness, sleeping on the job, I see a list coming, fatigue among shift workers, and have raised production efficiency in various industries. Okay, there's the parallelism marker for sure. Here's our coordinating conjunction, and here's our list. Have reduced sickness, sleeping on the job, fatigue among shift workers, and have raised. Okay. What do? We figure out what introduces the. We figure out what introduces a list. So, and this can be flexible. I mean, people are like, wait, what introduces the list? Is it human sleep cycle? Is it just have? Is it recently? Is it this whole beginning part? It's pretty much whatever you pick out that seems reasonable. So how about, we're just going to use have. Let's just use have as one introduces. Okay, so let's see. Recently implemented shift work equations based on studies of the human sleep cycle have reduced sickness. Oh, wait, I messed it up. Have sleeping on the job. No, that's not going to work, but that's interesting because you will do this. It makes sense that it could be have, but it doesn't work with the second list item. So we have to change course here and go with have reduced. Let's try that. Have reduced sickness, that works. Have reduced sleeping on the job, that works. Have reduced fatigue among shift workers, that works. And have reduced, have raised. It's out. A is out. I didn't see anybody choose A. We all saw that it doesn't work. It's going to be. And we know that the underlying part starts here. So we have reduced sickness. Do we know that has to work? Have reduced sleeping on the job. Have reduced fatigue among shift workers and raised. And have reduced raised. B is gone. I mean, this was straightforward, but we have to be so careful because now it's not in the, it got rid of the have. So that I almost fell into that trap because I said have is what carries over. So look at that. If I got the carryover wrong, I would have said that raise is correct because I would have said have raised makes sense. So we have to get our carryover right. And notice what they did. They put this carryover part that we need to carry over have reduced before the underlined portion. So that's, why do they do that? To confuse us. Almost got me. Okay. So that B is out because have reduced does not work with raised. Let's go to some of these other choices. Go to D. Have reduced sickness, have reduced sleeping on the job, have reduced lowered fatigue, that doesn't work, and have reduced raised. D is out. Right? D is gone because have reduced carries over to these first two. Have reduced sickness and sleeping on the job works. Have reduced does not work with lowered fatigue. We don't have reduced lowered fatigue. And have reduced raised does not work either. So the carryover takes us through this question, even though it's tricking, you know, a lot of people, but if we're careful with our carryover, it won't get us. Finally, have reduced sickness, sleeping on the job, and fatigue. Wait a minute, was lowered while raising. So have reduced sickness, this get a little freaky. Have reduced sleeping on the job and fatigue, have reduced fatigue among staff workers was lowered. That the have reduced fatigue among staff workers was lowered. So we already have a verb, and then we have another verb here. So none of this works. E is out. Carryover work for us again. Okay. Going back to see. Have reduced sickness. Have reduced sleeping on the job. Have reduced and fatigue. Okay, among shift workers while raising. Look what they did. They put a new conjunction in here, right? Or a new something. This is actually a kind of weird kind of clause. But anyway. So they changed the list. So the list ends here with fatigue, and you know, but our carryover saved us because we know that this while starts a new thing. C is correct. You don't have to carry over when the list ended at fatigue, right? Okay. Let's look at this one more time to see why it's correct, and then we'll move on to the next one. Have reduced sickness, have reduced sleeping on the job, and have reduced fatigue among shift workers while raising. Makes complete sense, while raising production efficiency. So what did they do? Just to make sure we see this, they messed with the underline and the non-underlined portion. They messed with this thing here. They got rid of the had in this choice so that we might fall for that, you know, to make B tricky. They did this other thing. They did the and fatigue, which works, but then they extended it here in E, so we had to notice that. And then finally, the reason they changed where the list ends here to fake us out from choosing C, although most people did, okay? Because our carryover worked. Okay, do we have while raising production? I don't know, this while raising production efficiency apply to all three? I guess so. Yeah, I think so. Okay, let's now one thing we're going to see with these. Another key thing we have to notice, so we said that parallelism is all about logic. And a key thing that means is that what's parallel does not mean it has to be exactly the same. Like we could say, John was running and fell down. Those two, was running and fell, are not quite the same, right? So, but it's still parallel, it's still logical. John was running and John fell down is logical, even though they're not exactly the same. So we will see that a lot of time they try to fake us out by doing things that are or are not exactly the same. And we can't fall for it. So let's check out a question where this matters. We're going to do the carryover thing. We're going to see, and we're going to remember that parallelism does not mean exactly the same, so they can't fake us out.
This is a YouTube. How I can
Copy paste that link.
how just show. This is the one that I
The lucky winner. What's the lucky winner choice? Got a lot of C's coming in. Be careful of following the crowd.
Send a message to somebody. No?
Okay, we got a couple different we have a couple different ideas here. Yeah, CE is pretty much sums it up. Something said CA. Yeah, why is one wrong and the other one's right? You know what? Before we go to this one, let's look at the previous question for a second, because some people are asking something about, and this really sums up the point. Parallel does not have to be exactly the same. Some people are asking, well, how can sickness and sleeping on the job? So here's sickness and here's sleeping on the job. How can they be parallel? And this is the point. Parallel does not have to be exactly the same. Something can reduce sickness, right? shift work equations could have reduced sickness, and they could have reduced sleeping on the job. And there's no reason why we can't put those two things in a list together. Now, there are situations where things that don't look quite the same don't work the same either. But sickness and sleeping on the job are two things that operate similarly. Okay, so they are parallel because they work they're logically equivalent. So even though sickness is a noun and sleeping on the job is a gerund phrase, we can still have them together in the same list. And you know they're going to do this too. So we have sleeping on the job and fatigue. I mean, another way they could have messed with this question is put some kind of gerund thing or some kind of, they'll do that. Two nouns in a gerund or two gerunds in a noun and make you think that one is right. In fact, going back to the question we're looking at now, let's see what they did to us. Because I saw a lot of people. Let's see, don't. Okay, so let's take a look. I can only center this thing. Oh my God, I never should have changed it. That's why. Okay, I'm going to deal with this. Okay, while some propose to combat widespread illegal copying of computer programs by attempting to change people's attitudes toward pirating, others by suggesting reducing software prices to decrease, and still others by calling for the prosecution of those who copy software illegally. Okay, so what do they do here? Is this right? Let's check it out. While some propose, so we have an opening subordinating conjunction. While some propose, so there's our noun and verb. Some propose to combat widespread illegal copying of computer programs by attempting. Okay, so we have a subordinate clause, and then we have others by suggesting, and still others by calling. So where's the main verb? While some others and others do something, does anybody else do anything else? What's going on here? Where's the main verb? Where's the main clause? There isn't. A is out. Even though, by the way, it is parallel. While some propose by attempting to change, others by suggesting, and still others by calling. So what did they do? I'm sure people choose this choice all the time. Is they made it perfectly parallel. It's, yeah, it's parallel. Well, they're not going to give it to us that easily. A lot of time they're going to fake us out with perfect parallelism, just as they did there. So, okay. Take one, please. Okay, that's close. B. By suggesting the reduction, okay. While some propose to combat widespread illegal copying of computer programs by attempting to change people's attitudes toward pirating, others by suggesting the reduction of software prices to decrease the incentive for pirating, and others still others call. But once again, we don't have the main verb. It's still just a list of by this, and now we got rid of by. Right? So actually, we have two conjunctions. I'm sorry. We have two conjunctions where we really need one, right? While some is our first conjunction. So you have a conjunction up here. We have the. We only have two clauses. So we don't need, I'm sorry. Oh my God. You don't need two conjunctions for two clauses. Let's go to C. And here's the tricky one. While some propose to combat widespread illegal copying of computer programs by attempting to change people's attitudes toward pirating, others suggest, sounds good. So now we have a new clause. Others suggest the reduction of software prices for decreasing the incentive for pirating, and still others call. That seems pretty good. For the prosecution, okay. So is this right? Well, Sean, let's keep this for now. Let's keep C for now. Let's go to D. Well, that's how we were going to do this. We got rid of our two easy outs with no main clause, or our two, sentence structures. Get rid of your easy outs. Go to D. Well, some do this, propose copying by attempting. Others suggest, okay, that's good, the reduction of software prices to decrease the incentive for pirating, and others by calling. Notice what happened here. We had a clause, while some do X, others suggest this. So our second clause, right? And still others by calling. Wait a minute, is this a clause? No. So let's carry this over. While some propose to combat widespread illegal copying, others suggest. While some propose, others suggest. Okay, that's good. And then let's do our and still others. So wait a minute. Others suggest recall the reduction, and others by calling. So suggest carries over to by calling? No. What about E? While some propose X, others suggest reducing software prices to decrease, okay? And still others are calling. We have 3 parallel clauses, right? I don't see anything wrong with that. We have 2 choices that look basically right. Yeah, you know, I'm saying, what are the parallel phrases? It's all over the place. I'm almost wondering, honestly, I'm like, whoa, why did I bring this one up? But basically what's going on here is we have 3 clauses going on. While some propose, others suggest, and still others are calling, right? So it works. E works. Let's check C. While some propose, others suggest the reduction of software prices for decreasing the incentive for pirating. So look what's going on here. In the middle of they gave us the most parallel choice. While some propose, others suggest, and still others call. That sounds perfect. But they threw this thing in the middle here, the reduction of software prices for decreasing the incentive for pirating. That doesn't make sense. Software prices for decreasing the incentive? Doesn't make any sense, right? So even though this is the most parallel choice, while some propose, others suggest, and still others call, it's out. Let's go back to E. While some propose, others suggest, and still others are calling. Is it the most parallel choice? No. But does it have this major issue? No. So the reason I brought up this question, which is a little different from some of the other ones we saw, is to show that the one that's the most parallel, you know, they're going to fake this out sometimes, guys. And it doesn't have to be exactly the same. So even though propose, suggest, and are calling are not, we have propose up here, right? Suggest here, and are calling here, even though they're not exactly the same. This is why I brought this up. That's the best choice. So the lesson with this one is parallelism does not have. Okay. Now the next lesson we're going to see here, the next question is a little different from these other ones. Sometimes they do what I call sneaky parallelism. I mean, the 2 questions we've seen so far. In the 2 questions we've seen so far, parallelism has been front and center. But they don't always do it that way. They don't always put the parallelism front and center. Sometimes they hide it, and we have to pick up on it. And, you know, so we'll be looking at choices and get faked out and think we're good. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the choice or somewhere, they hide a little bit of parallelism. But before we see that, why is for decreasing the incentive for piracy, pirating wrong at C? Suggests the reduction of software prices for decreasing. It doesn't really, it's, we have a modifier issue. It basically is saying that the software prices are for decreasing incentive. Okay. You don't suggest the reduction of software prices for decreasing the incentive. They're not prices for. Yeah. So true. If it said suggest the reduction of software prices as it does here in order to decrease the incentive requirement, right? That's what we need to see. So for software prices for decreasing, exactly. It becomes software prices for decreasing. Okay, next. Sneaky parallelism. So as I was saying, they sometimes they'll sneak in because they're not always going to put it front and center, especially on the harder questions. I see them do this so often. It's something not only but also somewhere in there, or they put a list somewhere in the sentence, and you don't notice it. So that's the whole noticing part of this test, is we really have to notice when we do that. Notice that sneaky parallelism. Might have to shrink that. Let's try some. Don't get smoked by sneaky parallelism in this question. Okay, so let's take a look at this and see what they did. Because this is different from the others. The others were so focused on parallelism, is what basically was all about noticing a list. But this one has a whole other wrinkle to it. So it begins with a modifier in preparation for the prediction of a major earthquake that will hit the state. A satellite-based computer network is being built by the California Office of Emergency Services for identifying earthquake damage and to pinpoint the most affected areas. So if we start looking at these and comparing these choices, we see in this one it says in preparation for the prediction. In this one it says in preparing for the prediction. And then here, we're doing our comparison and preparing for a major earthquake. So now we have a little different wrinkle in preparing for a major earthquake. So we're starting to see the difference between these choices. To prepare for a major earthquake and to prepare for a major earthquake. So that our instinct might be to start by looking at these modifiers, and we could get rid of some choices this way. So let's, for instance, look at choice D. To prepare for the prediction of a major earthquake hitting the state, a satellite-based network is being built by the California Office of Emergency Services. To prepare a satellite-based network is being built. So this basically is saying that in order to prepare, a network is doing something. Well, the network isn't doing the preparing. Does everyone get that? To prepare for the prediction, a network is being built. So the network is the subject of the sentence. So they're not saying like people are building something. They're saying to prepare, a network is doing something. D is out, so we got rid of it with that modifier. Let's check some of these others. In preparing for the prediction that a major earthquake will hit the state, I have a question. There's a meaning issue. In preparing for the prediction, so that's what we're going to prepare for. In preparing for the prediction that a major earthquake will hit the state, the California Office of Emergency Services is building a satellite-based computer network. That doesn't make sense either because we don't prepare for prediction. Right? And preparing for prediction, the California office is building a computer network that will identify earthquakes. It doesn't make sense. So we can get rid of a lot of these on these meaning issues. In preparation for the prediction of an earthquake, A is out too. So we're down to C and E. And if we compare these two, what happens? C, in preparing for a major earthquake that is predicted, makes sense. The California Office of Emergency Services is building a satellite-based computer network to identify. That sounds perfect. And a lot of people pick C. Let's check E. To prepare for a major earthquake that is predicted to hit the state, that makes complete sense. The California Office of Emergency Services building a satellite-based computer network that will identify. That sounds perfect too, and a lot of people pick E. So which one is correct? Well, now we have our sneaky parallelism. Because if you're too quick, and look at this, you know what they did? In preparing for a major earthquake, the California Office of Emergency Services is building a satellite-based computer network. That doesn't sound that good to me. In preparing, they're building a satellite-based computer network. I don't know. It sounds a little off. To prepare, this sounds great. To prepare, they're building a satellite-based computer network. Perfect. So, you know, it's so easy to say that he is correct. It sounds better than C. It works better than C. The only issue is our sneaky parallelism. So let's go to the end because we have two choices that basically look correct. What do we do when we have two choices that look correct? We look at the non-underlined portion. Okay, this is so key. It happens to me all the time still. I look at these essay questions and I go, man, these two choices look perfect. What is going on? And then, you know, light bulb, look at the non-underlined portion. So let's look at the non-underlined portion of E. Office of Emergency Services building a satellite-based computer network that will identify earthquake damage and to pinpoint. It's not parallel. A satellite-based computer network that will, okay, that sounds good. A satellite-based computer network to pinpoint sounds good, but okay, you know, so is it a satellite-based computer network that will identify, wait, and to pinpoint? No. Okay, so we can't do the carryover. Satellite-based computer network that will identify is perfect. Satellite-based computer network that will to pinpoint does not work. On the other hand, in preparing to identify earthquake damage, sure, let's go back to C. A satellite-based computer network to identify earthquake damage, perfect. And to pinpoint the most affected areas, perfect. So the sneaky parallelism at the end makes C. Now someone's saying shorter is often better. Shorter is often better, but don't do it that way. They interviewed one of the guys that works at GMAC, and he said, you know, we know you guys are looking for the shorter is better. So you think we're really going to do that? Let's go through it. Why doesn't it work? Why doesn't it work? Someone's asking. Prepare for a major earthquake that is predicted to hit the state. California Office of Emergency Services building a satellite computer network that will identify and to pinpoint. You know what they're doing here? They're basically coming at this. It's this thing. It's like you're saying it's a satellite-based computer network that will do something. So that becomes a noun phrase. And then to pinpoint takes us in a different direction. Let's do one more question. We have another sneak parallelism question. We got another 10 minutes. Yeah, let's do this. Okay, and when we do this one, there's one other thing that we can do, and you kind of saw it in the previous question. If you're really not sure, there's a basic rule we can follow. If everything else looks good, and you have two choices that kind of look as if they work with the logic and the carryover, the best thing we can do is go with the most parallel choice. Go with the most parallel choice. So look at this one when you do it. There's a couple choices that kind of seem as if they can work. And we're going to go with the one with the most parallel version. Like eliminate the illogical one. The completely insane illogical one. And then go with the most. So first, eliminate completely, like blatantly. How about that? Blatantly illogical. And then go with the most parallel. Careful. And don't put your answers up too soon. You might mess everybody up. Careful what you fall for. Got a few minutes left, so let's go on this one. So someone just asked, why are we going for the most parallel version? If in that question about the propose this and suggest, and the computer anyway, there was one where we went for the less parallel version, because if there's a blatant error, we don't go for the most parallel version that has the blatant error. But if we get rid of all the blatant errors, then we go for the most parallel version. So first you go through and eliminate everything that is clearly broken. And then a lot of times you end up with two choices that basically look, well, this looks as if it could work. And at that point, go with the most parallel version. And there's a few reasons why we do that, and these are discussed in more detail in the chapter. But basically, there's, just go with the most parallel version because it's going to be better 99.9% of the time, as long as you found the blatantly illogical error. Okay, so let's go with this. To help preserve ancient Egyptian monument threatened by high water tables, a Swedish engineering firm proposed installing pumps, perhaps solar powered, to lower the underground water level and dig trenches around the bases of stone walls. So let's do our carryover. To help preserve ancient monuments, a Swedish engineering firm, so what are we going to carry over? Has proposed, let's go with this, let's try it. Has proposed, can that carry over? Installing pumps. Okay, that sounds good. Has proposed installing pumps, perhaps solar powered, to lower the underground water level and dig trenches. Has proposed installing pumps and has proposed dig trenches. Does not work, right? So has proposed installing pumps, but works, but has proposed dig trenches does not work. So our carryover gets worked. Let's go with B. Has proposed installing pumps, perhaps solar powered, to lower the underground water level and to dig trenches. Now, that sounds pretty good, so I'm going to keep that for now. Let's go with C. Has proposed installing pumps to lower the underground water level and digging trenches. So now what's going on here is we have proposed installing pumps, perhaps solar powered, and proposed digging trenches. Because notice, pumps would not be digging trenches. So this is going with has proposed. So C works as well. Let's check D. Get rid of another easy out. So we're keeping B and C for now. The infamous last two choices, I hope they are. Has proposed installing pumps that lower the underground water level and that trenches be dug. So that seems to work too. So what happened to our infamous last two choices? Now we're up to infamous, because has proposed to installing pumps, perhaps solar powered, to lower the underground water level, and that I don't know. What's the deal here? Has proposed installing pumps, perhaps solar powered, that lower the underground water level and trench digging. So all these choices are starting to look right. You got to get rid of something. So what do? We're going to look for the most parallel things, but actually there's another issue with B. So let's get rid of B first. Has it proposed installing pumps, perhaps solar powered, to lower the underground water level and to dig trenches? So basically, the pumps are to dig trenches. You see what's going on there? Installing pumps to lower the water level and to dig trenches. The pumps are not digging trenches, so even though this is perfectly parallel, meaning it's going to kill it. Okay, so what do we do with D and E? Well, here's our rule. We've gotten rid of our eliminate the blatantly illogical ones. Now we need the most parallel version. Has proposed installing pumps, perhaps solar power, that lower the underground water level and that trenches be dug. So here's the deal. We have proposed installing and proposed that trenches be dug, right? And here we have proposed installing and proposed digging trenches. Clearly, this is the more parallel one. So I'm going to get rid of D and say that C is better. E, proposed installing pumps, perhaps solar powered, that lower the underground water level and trench digging. Is that as parallel to installing? No, right? And I'm going to explain why. If you want a real subtle reason why these two don't work, we'll talk about that too. We could also do it on this modifier, but I'm focusing on the parallelism right now. That's that lower. But anyway, here's what's going on here. So C is our correct answer. As proposed, installing pumps to lower the underground water level. Okay, that makes sense. And digging trenches. So proposed, installing, and digging is perfectly parallel. It was our most parallel version, and that's why we chose. Now, if anybody wants to know, like the V51 reason, why the most parallel version generally is correct, here it is. As proposed, installing is kind of a, we're proposing a specific thing. We're not proposing an action. We're proposing, I'm sorry, installing is an action, but it's sort of, it's one way of using the word propose. Like I proposed a gift, I proposed a toast, I proposed a thing. So it's a certain subtle way of using propose. Now look at this, has proposed that trenches be dug is a different way of using it, propose. If this is sort of subtle for you, don't worry about it because you probably don't have to know it because you can just look for the most parallel choice. But proposed installing, it's kind of like proposing a thing. And when I say I propose that trenches be dug, it's more, I'm suggesting what you should do. So it's kind of two different ways of using the same word proposed in the same spot, but you can't use the same word in two different ways at once. Now, if you didn't get that, whatever, don't worry about it. But we can't use, I'll show you a different one here, just to make it, if this will help make it absolutely clear. John made Sue happy. Okay, John made Sue happy makes complete sense. John made a cake makes complete sense. John made a cake means he created the cake. And John made Sue happy means John caused Sue to be happy. So we're using, even though the carryover works, we can say John made Sue happy, we carry that over. John made a cake, that carries over. But we're using made in two different ways in the same spot. We're using one word to mean two things. That's why the most parallel version is going to be correct. Because we can't use two of the same words to mean two different things. So if anybody is wondering why the most parallel version is correct, it's because generally when they're not the same, E is a little more subtle. I don't know. We won't go over that too much. But anyway, because we're out of time. Yeah, E is sort of okay. We could talk about this modifier and why trench digging isn't quite, I don't know. We could, you know, it's sort of the same thing here with proposed installing and supposed digging, as opposed to trench digging. It's kind of a, anyway, we don't have time to go through that, but you get the basic idea, okay? That if something is not as parallel, then we're probably using the word in some slightly different way between the two ways it's used. So why not just choose the most parallel choice once you've got rid of the most. That's it for parallelism. So what was that? Let's review real quick. What do we do here? In most cases, to find errors in parallelism, we notice parallelism markers. In all of these, we had conjunctions, we had coordinating conjunctions, we had some kind of list going on, even in the one with clauses that maybe I shouldn't have even used. Okay, so you look for the parallelism markers and then just confirm whether it's parallel. And in most cases, the way to determine whether it's parallel is just use carryover, man. Whether it's correlative structure or anything else, just use this carryover thing and see if everything works. Yeah, there's also, and there's a subtle modifier error too in that last question. But anyway, okay, thanks a lot, y'all. It's great. Have a happy rest of the Friday.